Bloomberg's Akshat Rathi is joining us now. Akshat, thanks so much for your time. I'm wondering what the climate change and green connection is here. As we were talking with Brian just now, what we ended up seeing, in different parts of the world can actually have an effect on local weather in Texas. What's the climate change connection here?
Yeah, I think as Brian was saying, I think people underestimate how much the weather, which is a phenomena that happens on a daily basis, is connected to the climate, which is a longer term trend that's playing out across the planet. And what Brian was explaining was essentially that on the poles, you have more warming happening just because of the way the planet rotates and heat gets trapped than heating around the equator. And so the gradient of temperature difference, which used to be large, has changed. And that is keeping essentially every so often the fridge opens up, so to speak. The polar vortex that keeps the cool temperature up in the poles opens up and gives you these deep freezes that North America and a few weeks ago Europe was experiencing.
So the retirement of fossil fuel plants, Akshat, has caused disruptions before as the world chases its clean energy goals. Jobs are also at stake. I'm wondering what the connection is here to the retirement of fossil fuel power providers and what's happening in Texas, because it does seem like that critics are blasting Texas's increased reliance on wind power right now.
So that's a common criticism that comes up every time there is a concern that energy demand has gone up or down and is not being able to be met as required. We should know that, yes, wind turbines have frozen. They are not built in Texas for that weather. Of course, we have wind turbines up in Canada, up here in Norway and Sweden, that run perfectly well, but they're just designed to be working at that temperature. So it's no surprise that some wind turbines in Texas have stopped. But it's also only a small proportion of the problem. So, the numbers show approximately about a fifth of electricity was expected to come from wind, and some of that has fallen through.
Okay.
But a large proportion has been from fossil fuel power plants, which some of them have turned off unexplained reasons, and others have turned off because gas isn't able to get to the power plants because of frozen pipes in those places.
Yeah, I mean, an absolute host of issues. What's the solution here, though? If renewables aren't necessarily to blame, an increased reliance on renewables, and things aren't quite working out from a fossil fuel perspective either, what is the solution here so this doesn't happen again? I mean, millions of people without power and heat.
So right now we are worried about power and heat. In terms where climate change gets worse, we'll be worried about air conditioning as well. And so the eventual outcome that we need is more reliable energy, but also fewer emissions. That means renewables will have to play a bigger and bigger role. The solution that you can apply now, and something that Europe has done quite well and the US can really replicate, is to build these long interconnectors, they're called. They're essentially long transmission lines connecting countries. So here in the UK, we are connected to Norway. Spain is connected to France. Denmark is connected to Sweden. And what that allows you to do is being able to move renewable electricity from where it's being generated to where it's required. The US doesn't have those kinds of interconnectors, especially not at the scale where the middle of the country is known for its renewable resources and the coasts are known for consuming a lot of that electricity. And those connectors really need to be built.
Is that something that is politically tenable in the United States? Is it something that is from an engineering perspective is tenable, is realistic?
So 100% tenable from an engineering perspective. China, for example, has a 2,000-mile high voltage DC line, which connects their western region with their eastern region, where most of the consumption happens. From a political perspective, it's complicated, but not undoable. So in the past, there have been projects that have been put forth by American companies to build these transmission lines, but because utilities did not want change too quickly or weren't sure that renewables will be cheap enough, they stopped these projects from happening. And so now that there is a goal under Joe Biden to reach a carbon-free grid by 2035, there is 100% the case to be made that these transmission lines are needed.
Bloomberg's Akshat Rathi. Akshat, thank you as always for your time. We really appreciate it.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.